Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today let's talk about heel toe. So personally, I don't think my heel toe technique is actually that good, but I had posted a couple videos on Reddit and someone reached out and was like, hey, can you make a video on how to heel toe? So admittedly, it's actually not a video I want to make. It's sort of like a Me Too video. The idea behind the channel is that we at least try to make videos on things that you can't really find on YouTube, topics that maybe most people aren't talking about, probably because no one's interested in them. But hopefully there's some people out there who are. So the heel toe thing, it's been discussed like endlessly, right? But I thought about it and I was thinking about it and I go, okay, well, there's maybe a couple things that we can expand upon when it comes to heel toe, or at least maybe there's more footage that we can show you or different angles that we can show you about kind of the heel toe technique versus just talking about what it is. But that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about what it is, because I feel that if you've at least clicked on this video, it would be an injustice not to tell you what heel toe is. So basically the idea behind heel toeing is it's not to slow the car down. And I know a lot of people think that, well, you want to, as you're braking or entering a corner, you can heel toe and it puts you in a lower gear and it helps engine brake into the corner. And that is absolutely not the case. Heel toeing to get down into a lower gear is a technique you use so that when it comes time to get back into the gas coming out of the corner, that you're in the right gear, and so you're in the right power band, or in the power band of the motor. There's some people out there who don't heel toe at all. I've been to a rallycross class where the instructor, he was a proponent of not heel toeing, instead just braking into the corner, and there will be a moment in the corner where you get off the brakes and you get back on the gas, and at that point then shift into the gear that you want. I can't do that. I've spent so much time learning how to heel toe that the idea of not heel toeing into a corner and just braking, and then somewhere in the middle of the corner just shifting into the gear that I want, it's just, I can't wrap my head around it. But if that's how you do it, more power to you. If I'm honest, it took me like 16 years to perfect, or not, I wouldn't say to perfect my heel toe, but to get to this point in terms of driving. And so all of that also encompasses the heel toe technique. For the most part, the majority of my driving career, I just spent kind of revving the engine, downshifting, and then braking. And it wasn't until the last few years that I really focused on perfecting the heel toe technique. So if you don't get it on your first try, don't feel so bad. I think it's sort of one of those things that you're working on for the entire time, like your entire life, right? Driving is one of those things that there's always going to be something that you're going to be working on, trying to perfect. And so no one's perfect. No one is the best at driving. There are some aspects of it that you're really good at, and then some aspects that you'll always need to focus on or work on. Okay, so fundamentally the idea behind the heel toe is you step on the brake, your engine RPM starts to drop as you slow down. You want to shift into a lower gear so that you have you're in the power band coming out of the corner. Your brake, you kind of start to slide the gear lever out of, say, fourth gear. You might step in on the clutch. So step on the clutch, slide the gear out, shift into the next gear, and then you want to, and this is like the heel part of it, is you want to blip the throttle with your heel and bring the throttle up, because as you downshift into the next gear, it's going to bump the engine RPM back up. and then slowly let the clutch out, right? Or let the clutch out and then get back on the gas. I think a lot of the videos that you'll see online focused on the blipping aspect, trying to time the blip or get the right amount of blip, or engine RPM blip. And while that's true, you're not always going to get it perfectly, right? So in my opinion, heel toe isn't just about the engine blip on the throttle, it's also about the clutch release, and it's your clutch control. Because you can mask an under blip or over blip, meaning you didn't apply enough engine RPM or you apply too much engine RPM via your clutch control, right? So your left foot actually has a lot more to do with heel toeing, in my opinion, than a lot of people talk about. And I should say this is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is the right way to drive the car. This is just how I drive the car. So if you over blip, you can kind of drag the clutch out or slow your clutch release down to either let the engine RPMs fall back to where you want it to be, or you can slowly drag it out and pull the engine RPMs back down to where it should be. If you under blip, it's the same idea. You can slowly let the clutch out and let the engine speed up the transmission, so that it's not as, in both cases, it's not as a shock to the car, so that you're not upsetting the weight balance of the car as you're entering the corner. So in my opinion, there's a lot more clutch control that is required. And I don't know if I can show it to you per se, because it's sort of, it's very subconscious for me, but we'll drive around here, see if we can catch a few clips of my heel toe and maybe an over blip or an under blip. And on the last part, I would say is, as you're working on the heel toe, I think focus on getting the right engine RPM first. Then you can add in the subtlety of working the clutch. So let's get to driving. So when it comes to the Subarus, heel toe. So I've got relatively, I guess, like average or above average, maybe size foot. I wear like a 10.5 to an 11.5 shoe, depending on what shoe it is. I think 10.5 in Pumas here. Because of the transmission tunnel on the all-wheel drive cars, I don't heel toe with my heel, because the tunnel, my foot's so long that it's hard for me to step over and actually use my heel to blip the gas. So it's more in the Subaru, it's more of like a side blip. I'm really like rotating my foot in line with my toes, right? So I'll step and then I'll roll my foot over in line with my toes and blip down on the gas. Much of how you do this in your car is going to depend on the size of your foot and the placement of the brake and the gas pedal, and then whether or not you have space for your heel. And that's really going to come down to like an all-wheel drive car. In the Cayman, I can actually really blip with my heel, but I cannot do that in the Subaru. All right, so let's drive around a little bit. I'll try to get some heel towing in, and maybe we can kind of catch my technique and then talk about it. Yeah, let's see how this goes. So definitely one of the first things that I would work on before I went to attempt to heel toe is just a simple downshift. So that was a little bit under, like I under blipped it. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but yeah, just doing that. I think just getting a feel for how much you need to blip the gas to get it to come up, Every car is going to be different. Gear ratios are going to be different. So it's just good practice. So just doing that all the time, right? Don't worry about the brakes. Just focus on how much you need to blip the gas to get it to go into the next gear, to match the RPMs that would happen in that next gear at any given speed. Know that as you go from 5 to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, the blips or the differences in RPM are going to be greater, so you need to blip or hit the throttle longer. So for example, because we're talking about throttle blips here, here's 5 to 6, very small amount, almost barely touching the throttle. Here's 5 to 4, a little more gas, and here's 4 to 3. So I'm sure you guys probably get a good amount of practicing for when it comes to downshifting. So you probably have a good idea of what RPM or how much you need to blip the gas to get into a certain RPM as you're downshifting. But if you haven't done that, it's definitely a good exercise, just so you're not kind of overwhelming yourself when you kind of make the transition to heel towing. Okay, we should have a chance here to kind of do some heel towing coming off the freeway. So that was kind of like a slowed an under blip. Didn't blip it enough, but I let the clutch out really slow right there to try to bring the RPM up on the transmission, and it was smooth. In the car, it was smooth. So that one, that 4 to 3 was fine. The 3 to 2, not so great. Again, under blipped the throttle and had to control the clutch with my left foot. So I'll let it out so that it kind of catches the flywheel. And when I feel that happen, I'll kind of hold it there for a split second to let the flywheel spin up the transmission, and then I'll let it out. So hopefully when I review the footage, you can see that maybe 3/4 of the way my foot comes off quickly, and at the last quarter of the way, it's a little bit of a slower release to let the transmission spin up, so I'm not jerking the car. I think that's sort of one aspect of heel toe that most videos kind of miss is the clutch control. So I don't know if we're going to catch me over blipping on the streets. It's not something that I do very often, like over rev the engine when I'm trying to heel toe on the streets, but it is something that happens at the racetrack or on track. And maybe I can like throw in a couple clips here so you can see what that looks like. But the same technique for clutch control in bringing up the transmission RPM or bringing down the transmission RPM all revolves around letting the clutch kind of slip slightly on the flywheel to match the RPMs between the transmission and the engine. And it comes down to your left leg, and again, clutch control, and just for a fraction of a second slipping it so that it can bring the RPMs together. One of the other challenges with heel toe is that when you're on the brake and you're blipping the throttle, you don't want to lift off the brake, so you don't want to change your braking pressure. It's definitely a weakness of mine, and you'll see it in a lot of my videos. I'll brake hard, and when I go to blip, you'll see my brake, my foot come off the brake slightly, and that's a tough one. I think a lot of that is due to like the pedal placement in this particular car, but that's kind of just an excuse. There's nothing I can do about the pedal placement, right? So I just gotta get better at it, or I gotta work on the technique more. But just kind of be cognizant of that. That you want to have, once you're on the brake, you want to have that kind of steady application of the brake, even while you're rolling onto the gas for the throttle blip. Alright, the last thing I want to talk about is the timing of your heel toe. So, we covered hopefully all the aspects of how to execute a heel toe, how to match the engine RPM to the transmission RPM with the throttle as well as the clutch. The last part is like, when do you actually heel toe? On the streets, kind of heel toe whenever you feel like it, right? But at the track, the heel toe should come kind of at the end of your braking point, right? As we were saying earlier, heel toeing into a lower gear is not to help slow the car down. You have more than enough brakes in the car to slow the car down. It's more about getting into the right gear so that you're in the power band, accelerating out of the corner. So the heel toe, you really want the heel toe to happen right towards the end of your braking zone, so that you're entering, or you're in the right gear just as you're finishing up your braking, and then transitioning back onto throttle. You don't want your heel toe to happen at the beginning of your braking zone, because there's a potential you may over-rev the engine and blow it up, and it's not there to help you slow down, right? The brakes are there to help you slow down. You're just trying to get the car in the right gear for the mid to exit of the corner. And I think that just about covers it. Let's see here. I guess one last thing would be timing of the shift. When you actually move the shift lever when you're heel toeing or downshifting. Let's see. For me, it's kind of a hard one to answer. So for me, it's more like if I'm in third gear, and I get on the brakes, and as I'm on the brakes, I'm clutching in and pulling out of the third gear at the same time. And then as I'm sort of like in neutral, that's where I'm gonna blip. And then like as I'm moving from neutral into second, that's where the blip happens and I'm letting my clutch out, right? So I'm not blipping the throttle when I'm in third gear. I'm sort of blipping the throttle somewhere in between the neutral, the transition where I go from neutral into the gear that I want. So let's see if we can kind of show that here. So yeah, that's kind of hard to see and kind of hard to demonstrate, but I'm clutching in, pulling the car out of say, fourth gear. So I'm on the brakes, clutching in, pulling the car out of fourth gear, and then as I move from fourth to third, I blip and I clutch out. So what I don't want to have happening is I brake and I'm revving it as I'm pulling the car out of fourth gear. I want to rev it somewhere between when I'm in neutral and then transitioning into the next gear. But yeah, you know, personally, I think the magic happens in the clutch release or the clutch control. At least for me. Might be the wrong way too. I don't know if that's like the right way to heel toe, but that's just how I do it. Well guys, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully when I edit this video down, it's short and not too long. I apologize. I know a lot of my videos are super long, but I kind of don't plan ahead and just start recording, and they end up being like 30-40 minutes long. So if you end up watching all of it, I appreciate you for doing that. And hopefully I'm at least covering stuff that other people are missing, or at least covering things that you actually want to see. So thank you very much for watching. And as always, we'll see you at the next video. Take care. Bye.